All right, with that, we're about 3 minutes past 7, so I think I'm gonna get started. Thank you everyone for coming. I'm Shannon Rose McAuliffe, and I'm the manager of the Student Arts Programs here at MIT. We're very pleased to hear from this really fantastic panel of students and faculty involved in the arts at MIT. Joining us, we have Justin Park from Syncopation, Ryan Kim and Junhee Lee from the Logarhythms, and MTA professor Ian Hatwick. Thank you all for being here. Tonight, this group is going to share with us a bit about their experiences with playing and recording virtual music during the pandemic, and then we'll have some time for questions and comments. And before we get underway, quick disclaimer that this event is being recorded and may be made publicly available on the Arts on the Radar website or elsewhere in the future. If you do not wish to appear in the recording, please make sure that your video and audio are muted during the event. And please contact us at artsontheradar@mit.edu if you've got any questions or concerns. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the Logarhythms.
Hello, my name is Junhee. I'm the president of the MIT Logs. We're an a cappella group on campus. We have been around for 70 years. This is our 71st or 72nd year performing, I think. So we're a pretty old group. And by nature of a cappella, primarily what we do is sing. So in a normal year, that would mean that we spend around 6 hours a week, separated into 3 2-hour rehearsals, rehearsing music. So that, of course, in general, requires a lot of physical connection. Like we're all in the same studio, singing to each other, reactively adjusting like volume, pitch, so on and so forth. And as you can expect, a lot of music making in general is very collaborative and in person. So when we were sent home last semester, it was there was a big transition period during which we were figuring out how we would proceed with the rest of the semester. Fortunately for us, we had a lot of time to think, but also we had a lot of stuff kind of taken care of beforehand. So we were in a situation where we had a lot of arrangements kind of figured out. We were in a situation where everything that we had planned for the semester was pretty much already done, and it was just a matter of finding a way to perform it somehow. So that made the transition process much easier. But ultimately, what we ended up doing is we had a weekly Zoom meeting during which most of the time we actually didn't rehearse. Most of the time it was actually just social, but simultaneously there was a lot of time spent going over old arrangements, sometimes new arrangements, annotating and thinking about what we want it to sound like, how we should sing our parts, and also listening to the music we were supposed to be learning. So kind of the individual processes that we would normally do to prepare for a rehearsal, we just kind of did it together in Zoom. And that was kind of how we replaced in-person like auditory rehearsals. And then simultaneously, we had a lot of music prepared that we wanted to share. So we really, really wanted to find a way to present that. So our primary inspiration was through a bunch of other musicians who've already been doing this even without the pandemic. Like for instance, like Eric Whitaker had a concert, a virtual choir concert that was very, very popular, had a lot of singers, and also like artists like Jacob Collier have done lots and lots of collaborative videos with merged videos and audio. And so we thought it would be a good idea to produce videos that were produced separately, recorded audio and video in remote, distant locations, and then combined and produced into one final product. And then we also had an idea to queue our videos, stockpile them, and then release them all in kind of a concert style at the end of the semester. So that was the framework for how our semester went down. Overall, we had a pretty productive semester. The amount of music learning that we did and the amount of music making that we did was actually not very different from what we would normally do in a semester. So I think that what we did was a pretty good replacement, at least for our way of functioning. And also the Twitch stream at the end of the semester was also surprisingly more successful than we thought it would be. And it was a lot of fun to get to kind of watch that come together and see the audience enjoying it. Although there's, of course, no auditory or in-person reaction, but it was cool to see that there are a lot of people watching, giving comments and stuff like that. As for the more technical aspects of what we did over the semester, I'm going to hand that over to Ryan. Ryan is our event coordinator, and he was in charge of most of the concert that we put in, that we produced at the end of last semester. So yeah, I'll turn it over to Ryan and you can talk more about that.
Yeah, thanks, Junhee. Great to be here with you all. So we, as Junhee said, we did some remote a cappella productions this past semester because we weren't able to be physically on campus together. We found a way to remotely record different tracks and combine them into kind of a cohesive a cappella product, which included both audio and video. And one of the things I think is really cool about our production is that it was entirely self-contained. We didn't hire anyone to do any audio editing or video editing for us. And a lot of us didn't know that much about this beforehand, but we were able to learn throughout the pandemic and eventually create something that we're pretty proud of at the end. So I guess, first of all, how this actually ended up going down is we start with an arrangement, which is the center of an a cappella production. And an arrangement is basically where someone writes down all the notes that everyone is going to sing, including vocal, percussion, beatboxing, and just all the different rhythms, all the different syllables that people are going to sing, the solo, all the harmonies, and we have that all down on a couple sheets of paper, and we send that out to everyone normally. And what we do in this remote time is we transformed that paper sheet into a digital file, and then we sent that out to everyone. So a digital audio file, which contained basically how we envisioned the song being sung. And then everyone listened to that recording and then recorded themselves singing their part. So looking at the sheet music and listening to the reference track, they would record their part, and everyone would upload it to a central Google Drive file. Then the person who's mixing the audio, so mixing is a term just in audio production, meaning just to combine all the different audio tracks and make sure all the volume levels are right, apply different effects, do things like modify the frequencies to make the sounds a little bit different. And I guess I'll show a little bit about what that mixing process looked like. I'm going to share my screen right now. But basically, if you look here, here is one of our projects. I think this is actually our most involved project, but we have, so everyone filmed 2 tracks, a left track and a right track, because that creates a greater sense of space for the listener. And then we would combine all these tracks together in the different voice parts. And then we did some timing issues because in person, it's easy to get a sense of where everyone is. Like sometimes if someone rushes at one part, the whole group is able to kind of compensate for that. But because we're recording remotely, it's harder to anticipate how others are going to sing. And sometimes there's a need for timing correction or also pitch correction. But we did all of that within this file. And then we also recorded some extra parts. Like for example, there's a clapping section towards the end of this song. And I actually just recorded myself clapping like 10 times into my microphone right here. So you can see it on the screen right here, just a bunch of recordings of me clapping at slightly different times, and it creates the illusion that there's a chorus clapping. But yeah, we were able to combine all these different tracks and apply certain effects. Some examples of effects are reverb, which creates a sense that you're in a larger, like a concert hall or something, because there's different copies of the sound coming at later times or different reverberations. There's an effect called EQ, which is where you modify the different frequencies that are within a sound file, and you can emphasize certain parts of the sound to create a really different feel. And yeah, that was about it for the recording. And then we had everyone also record videos alongside, and we combined those videos together. And I think I'm going to screen share real quick what that ended up looking like. Is the audio playing? Okay.
What are you gonna do when the world don't orbit around you? So what are you gonna do when the world don't orbit around you?
So yeah, that was what our final product ended up looking like. We ended up having, I think, six or seven songs that we created for the semester, and we streamed it on Twitch, and it ended up being pretty successful. We were pretty happy with how it turned out. So I think that's about all I have. Thank you for having us, and I'll turn it over to the next group.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That was really exciting. And next, I'm going to invite Justin from Syncopation to get up on the figurative stage. Let's go.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. So yeah, as I've been introduced, so my name is Justin. I'm a third-year undergraduate at MIT, and I'm here on behalf of the a cappella group Syncopation. So we're of course in a very similar situation to the Logs and to all the other a cappella groups on campus, in that this past semester we've been unable to perform a concert live. And so we're struggling with what should we do in terms of producing music over the semester and also over the following summer. So we decided to take a similar approach, and we considered putting together some recording projects. And so we had a number of arrangements which we were considering. One of the biggest problems, as has been touched on by Junia and by Ryan, is the difficulty of rehearsing in a super efficient way while virtual. So we decided to focus our efforts mostly on the recording aspect of it. And so we looked at the list of songs that we have already performed and haven't gotten around to recording yet, or ones that we've been working on but haven't been able to fully bring to life because we all got booted off campus and such. So yeah, so we decided to take that approach. We recorded all our audio and video virtually and pieced that together from home, had a number of people working on that. So just to share some details of how that worked. I personally was on the production committee, so to speak, for Synco this past semester, and I in particular handled the audio editing for our projects that we put together. So what that entailed is a lot of the same of what Ryan showed earlier. So it involved the mixing, it involved retrieving everyone's audio files, balancing them properly, doing pitch and timing corrections. Perhaps one of the quick learnings I had from that is that I have a newfound respect for the people who do it professionally. Having to do that all myself, realizing that there's a lot that can go into make something really sound good and really like come through as a powerful mix that you might hear in a professional recording. But it was also a really cool experience because I had almost no knowledge about this going in. And so just learning how to do this from scratch, fiddling around with the software, fiddling around with things I could find on Google. If anything, is a testament to just diving in and trying it, tossing things together to mix it. Key takeaway, I think, for me is that there's a lot more than just tossing everything together and trying to line everything up so it sounds good. Ryan showed earlier a lot of the work that goes into balancing things and making sure that the pitch and timings all match up. There's also a lot you can do just with individual tracks. A number of softwares, even something free like Audacity, you can do things such as noise removals. You can compress your audio tracks. You can change the EQ, so you can make certain tracks open up a little more, make them sound a little less muffled. Boost the bass if you're on a track that requires a bit more of that, whether it's vocal bass or vocal percussion. And so just getting a sense of how that works, balancing those properly so that every track really comes through the way you want it to in the final mix, I think is something that there's no fixed handbook to, and it's something that you really get just by fiddling around with it. I think is the biggest takeaway develop just trial and error to figure out what works the best. Yeah, I don't want to dive too much into the technical details of how I did the audio mixing. On the video end, we actually had a lot of fun with this video this one project in particular. Because let me share my screen. Visible to everyone? Yeah, so we had a lot of fun with this this one particular project. So this is something that we had performed last fall. And so we performed it at concert, and we were planning on recording the song in studio to get it professionally mixed and such, but we didn't get around to doing that because we all had to leave campus. And so we considered, well, this is a nice hype song. Anyone who's familiar with K-pop is likely to know this song because Syncopation, being the East Asian interest a cappella group on campus, one of the big genres we sing is this sort of K-pop. And so we thought, okay, song by BTS, it's a nice hype song. So we decided to record it, but we thought, how could we kind of make this, give it our own little twist? And we saw all sorts of a cappella covers going around, making the rounds on Facebook with different groups all over the country, around the world. And a Zoom-themed cover seemed to be fairly common. So we really decided to kind of hone in on that idea. Just like people from the logs mentioned earlier, everyone just recorded themselves singing along in their video and sent it over for our video editor, Daniel Liu, for this project. And we kind of went with the Zoom theme. So we added a lot of these little quirks across the board, kind of this little chat feature, the Zoom tiles. Insider secret. The reason we had the videos flicker on one by one at the start is because some people's videos started later than we would have liked. So, hide the arrow with the staggered entrance. Looks cool though, and it looks very zoomy. Yeah, make with it what you can, I suppose. Yeah, so we had a lot of fun with this project because there were a lot of things that we could do with regards to giving these little quirks that people who use Zoom are very familiar with. For example, if I'd like to skip forward a bit, right up the course. Apologies, my internet's not fantastic. Looking for something right, 이제 조금은 나아갔어. I want something stronger than a moment.
All right, it looks like we're having a bit of an internet connection difficulty with Justin. Are you back?
Yep, I'm back.
All right.
Sorry, my internet's
Excellent.
potentially a little questionable right now.
Please don't worry. We've got about 2 more minutes, so if you want to wrap it up, that would be great. That was a really excellent video.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, one thing I didn't quite get to show off there, which I won't make an attempt right now just because my internet might die again. We did little things where we added some quirks. There's a second soloist, so when they switched over, we did like they raised their hand over Zoom to start soloing. We added little Zoom emojis when the vocal percussion did fancy things. And so this was really nice because it was also a really cool collaborative effort, something that even though one person was spearheading the video editing, it was something a lot of people could give feedback on in designing the storyboard, so to speak, for the whole video, deciding what little features we could add in, where transition should happen. And so this is a really cool way for us to still be able to work collaboratively on a project. It wasn't just people recording, sending it to 2 people to do all the work. Even past that, people could still contribute their ideas, find ways to give their feedback on the way the audio is coming along, on what we could do for the video. We had a number of iterations of both the audio where we sent it to the group and made sure everyone was really on the same page with where this project was going. And so, yeah, I think overall, I'd say that doing this sort of recording project, we put together some other recordings as well over this semester in the summer. This is, I think, the biggest one we did, the one I just showed you. But these sorts of projects, I think, were a really cool way to stay connected over the semester and over the summer, to keep producing music together, to really feel like everyone's getting involved in this and really still contributing to the group and to what we like to do, just make music for the community. So yeah, it's been an awesome experience, and we're definitely gonna continue recording and producing things this semester.
Excellent. Thank you so much. If you want, we would love for you to share some of the other recording projects that you've done. Probably in the chat would be the best, but we can also take those via email and send them out to people as well. All right, and with that, we are going to go to our last presentation, and that is Professor Ian Hatwick. Take it away.
Hi, so I'm Ian Hatwick. I'm a professor at MIT in the Music Technology Department in Music and Theater Arts. And I'm also the director of Family, which is the MIT Laptop Ensemble. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about how Family has approached performing and rehearsing remotely, and sort of how last semester went and what we're doing this semester. And it's pretty different. It was really great to hear the earlier two presentations. Obviously, the a cappella community at MIT is really strong, and they've done lots of things over the years. And I've actually, in my classes, had quite a few a cappella students learn about recording. And so I was curious to see how sort of the existing knowledge within the a cappella community would feed into the ability to deal with this transition and during these remote recordings, which were both really super successful. So good, congratulations and good job on that. But what we ended up doing is really different. And actually, we were the only ensemble at MIT that I know of that kept our performance schedule exactly the same as it was before the transition to being remote, as it was after. So we were able to do that because the laptop ensemble already focuses on network music performance. And I guess with that, I should maybe sort of like mention a little bit about what the laptop ensemble about, like what a laptop ensemble is. So we're an ensemble, a small group, generally around 6 to 7 to 8 people, who perform together using laptops as our primary sound source and interface. Sometimes we'll use MIDI controllers or other kind of like hardware, but most of the time, all of the sound that we're working with is generated in a laptop, and then either sent out and played through a speaker, or when we're playing remotely, we would sort of send it out over Zoom or something like that. Or over YouTube streaming for concerts. So a lot of the focus on this is what does a laptop bring to an ensemble context, and how do you perform electronic music together? And it's not at all obvious for a lot of people how that would play out. Electronic music, the way that we see it most of the time, is actually a solo or a duo at the most working together. We see DJs, we see solo artists, and this idea of having an ensemble of people communicating is not that common nowadays. And the neat thing about it is it gives new ways of collaborating that really are still, we're in the early days of exploring how this can work. So before even the switch to being remote happened, we were already doing network music. We were experimenting with creating information on my laptop and sending that information to your laptop, and then you can take that information and use it to generate music. And then you can send your information to somebody else's laptop, and they can use that information to generate music. And then you're hearing all of that at the same time. So I thought maybe I'd play a couple of videos just to orient you about what our normal performance practice is like, and then play a couple of videos also of what happened last semester, and I can talk about how that played out and how we set up the system to be able to do that. So that being said, so this is a recap of course, the Zoom window is blocking me, of our fall 2019 season. So one of the things that you're not seeing in this right now is that every performer has their own speaker that's right next to them. So the idea is that it's just like it would be in a music ensemble. When somebody's making sound, that sound is coming from that performer's location. And when you're in the room with everyone, the sound is distributed according to the ensemble. So you can tell what everybody is doing, and there's really a sense of spatial identity and spatial resonance in the room. And we would do all different kinds of formations. We would stand in small circles. We would sit down on the floor by the piano. We would sit amongst the audience sometimes. We would go and sit and stand all the way around the room in a giant circle, and even like walk around a little bit. So really would play around with space a lot, play around with spatialization a lot, really concerned with this idea of sharing musical materials, things like that. So when it came time to move remotely, we were able to take that same approach and move it online. And one of the reasons why we were able to do that so successfully is that we're already sharing information over networks, right? That's part of our normal practice. So the idea that we would share information over the internet remotely across, across the US and in Taiwan, it was really easy for us to do that. But we did have to create some new software that would generate all of the sound that you would hear. Everybody's laptop would basically generate all of the sound. So everybody would be hearing the sound from everybody's sound on their laptop, and then everybody would be sending control messages to everybody else. It was a giant network of people sending information back and forth. One of the interesting things about last semester too that was slightly different is that we were using a controller. So this piece, Cursors, is using a Launchpad grid controller as our input device. And we had a visualization for this piece where everybody had control over one little chunk of this circular sequence, and they could control the notes and placements on the sequence and interact both with the placing events and also interact with this cursor, which is triggering events. So this is a little bit of this piece, Cursors. So when we performed this is actually a video that I produced for an MTA event, but this is also exactly how we would perform it. All of these videos of this performances were taking place at the same time. So this was a real-time performance in all these different locations. We just had everybody sort of use a webcam to record their local video, and then we edited it together into a nice presentation. But we would do the same thing for concerts. So this is a concert that we did over Zoom, and we actually, the way we did it is we had a big Zoom room where everybody was in, and then we were streaming the audio and the video from my laptop through YouTube Studio. And actually we would stream different people's, different people would share their screens, and we would stream from one laptop to YouTube streaming services. So this is another concert that we did, another live concert that was played synchronously. And I think we're getting basically mono sound here. Zoom does not play very well with stereo sound. But one component that you're missing is we were also able to implement a 360-degree spatial audio algorithm. So you could actually hear each person's sound coming from a different location in space. You're not getting that right now because Zoom does not support stereo audio natively. Anyways. So that was something that we were able to do, like I said, largely because we were already working with network performances and able just to translate that into sort of this virtual setting. So this semester, and one of the reasons I wanted to show that last video is this semester we're doing entirely online. Some of the other semesters at MIT, or I'm sorry, some of the other ensembles at MIT are trying to bring in some synchronous, even some in-person rehearsal and performance. And I decided that since working virtually works really well for us, it's actually pretty comfortable based on the way that we work, we would stay entirely virtual so everybody has the same experience. There's no concern about whether people are on campus or not. And we're also exploring something else, which is a live coding performance. So live coding is this situation where people are typing code in real time, executing it, and then it generates sound. So just to give you a quick sense of what live coding looks like, this is our live coding environment we're using, where we're actually writing code and then executing it to generate sound. And I'm not getting sound right now, just because it's not playing nicely with Zoom. But that's what we're going to be doing this semester. So again, like a really different perspective than Syncopation and the Logarhythms and a lot of the other ensembles at MIT, because this is something that's very natural for us. So maybe I'll wrap up right there. I do have a lot of questions for the other two presenters in the MIT community generally. There's a lot of really interesting ways of approaching dealing with this virtual music performance, but I'll wrap up my section and we can move on to a Q&A or have a little discussion.
You've just basically handled my transition for me. I was about to thank all of you and suggest that we move into some Q&A. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat or to use the raise hand function. And I guess I will start about how you're all planning to, I mean, Ian touched on this, but how is everybody planning to continue rehearsing and producing music virtually? I open up the floor.
For us, our approach is very similar to this last semester. So we're going to continue producing videos and trying to hold another concert at the end of the semester. I think the main difference this semester will be that we're actually trying to rehearse. So of course, there's still not going to be any audio syncing through Zoom, and there are going to be latency delays. But what we're trying to do is just share computer sound, sing along to ourselves, kind of emulate the concept of rehearsal without the reactiveness. So that's going to be one way we're going to try to enhance the music learning process, especially since we're doing all new arrangements this semester. Does anyone else want to say something?
I have some questions, actually. If anybody has any interest or time, I know it's a big subject, but I'm a musician myself, and we've been struggling to come up with ideas for using low latency programs. So if anybody has any ideas about that, I'd be really curious to hear about it.
I could probably chime in, unless somebody else wants to.
Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
So there's a lot of different ways that people have tried to do low latency audio. And there's actually a move right now, I think it's called LAMIT, low latency audio at MIT. Professor Aaron Ngozi, who's another professor in the music tech department at MTA, has been organizing this. So there's been a community of people who do network music for a long time, and they use this tool called Jack Trip. It's an open source, low latency audio network connection where you can stream audio from multiple locations to other multiple locations. So you can do this kind of like multi-site real-time performance. But it's really challenging to do this in a way that's effective. We all know that Zoom doesn't work, right? And the reason why is because Zoom has all of this latency, which is built in to buffer the audio. And so Jack Trip is trying to implement a more efficient network where you can sort of share audio in real time. But you're always going to be limited by a couple of things. You're limited, first of all, by the speed of light, which is actually not inconsiderable when you're dealing with intercontinental audio, which can be at many milliseconds of a delay to the audio. And then also signals going through the internet. The internet is not designed for real-time network transmission. It's designed for buffer, and it's designed to get information there reliably rather than in time. So, so dealing with these things can be really tricky. I think that what Iran has found, well, if you have a really robust internet network like MIT does, like an academic university does, you can leverage that academic network, which is going to be not have many of the same latency problems that commercial internet will have. Like our home internet will have much worse latency than a university infrastructure internet. So if everybody's at a university, then using something like Jack Trip to do low latency audio is actually pretty feasible. And again, mostly feasible within like a 400 or 500 mile range, because once you get out of 400, 500 miles, the speed of light becomes a factor in terms of delay. So that I think is sort of the situation that's going on with that. If you're trying to do low latency audio locally, it's not impossible, but also to set these things up is not technically trivial. So it takes a lot of trial and error and a lot of sort of like sitting down and figuring this stuff out. So possible, but not easy. Most people aren't doing it. If it was easy, people would be doing it all over the place. And it's hard enough that most people are not doing it. Has anybody here had any experience with that?
I just want to tag something on that. So I haven't gotten experience yet, but I will be, because I'm also part of the chamber music program and Emerson. So I've like been discussing with the people there about working with this low latency technology. So I've seen a lot of what's been discussed about it. And regarding syncopation specifically, we've considered the option of using this low latency technology, and we might for just like the occasional jam session or whatever. But like Logs mentioned, we won't be doing rehearsals in the traditional sense of like singing synchronously, because even if we get everything optimal, we have people on the other side of the planet, and at a certain point, the low latency solutions just don't work. So we're definitely limited in that sense, and so our rehearsals this semester we're labeling them more as workshops, because they're not going to be rehearsals in the usual sense of like singing together and doing everything synchronously. Yeah, we are still planning to produce things similar to how we did this past semester, but unfortunately we still won't be able to get the same feel of singing together.
That's great to hear. I also saw that Ryan looked like he was trying to chime in at one point. So as we're about to wrap up, I just want to make sure that he has a chance to come in too.
Oh, I mean, most of what I was going to say was actually said by Ian and Justin. I guess I'll add in that we did end up trying a low latency solution on a program called Jamkazam, and it was not feasible with someone across the country. Like I tried doing it with I'm based in Virginia, and I tried doing it with someone in California, and the delays were like something like 1/10 of a second, which is just a non-starter for simultaneous rehearsal. I did try it with a friend in DC, so he was about 40 miles away, and it was pretty acceptable at that point. So I think in the future, especially if the software is improved, perhaps we can't do cross country, but something like if everyone's in Boston, but we can't meet up in person due to social distancing requirements, we could all rehearse together in a room. I could see that becoming a reality at some point, although probably not before the end of this pandemic.
All right. We are coming up on the end of the session. This has been really fantastic. If anybody has any parting shots, I would love to hear them. But if not, I'd like to invite you to stick around. In this room, we'll have a 15-minute break, and there's going to be some slideshows happening with some information surrounding all of Arts on the Radar, and there's going to be some nifty trivia about the arts at MIT. So if you feel like hanging out, that would be great. And if you'd rather get up, stretch, have a drink of water or something, at 8 o'clock in this room, we'll be doing a roundtable panel with some of our most actively engaged student artists at MIT, and they'll discuss their experiences engaging with arts on campus and virtually. And in the other Zoom room, which we can send information about on the website, there is a presentation, a maker workshop through ACT, Arts, Culture, and Technology. So with that, I bid you all farewell. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, everyone.
About all
Thanks,
of this
Shannon.
great music.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Cutting across the archive, from photo montage to digital folklore. This advanced photography course is designed for students who wish to explore photography, images, and archives as tools and resources for artistic practices. The course focuses on the use of archival images and photographic practices while encouraging students to explore analog, digital, and new technologies. Through lectures, readings, film screenings, student-driven projects, visiting artist presentations, and critic sessions, students experiment with a range of artistic strategies while engaging in cross-disciplinary research and working on collaborative and individual assignments. Across a diverse spectrum of themes and historical contexts, students read and discuss theoretical texts related to the use of archives and artistic practices. Advanced Video and Related Media. This course introduces advanced strategies of image and sound manipulation, both technical and conceptual. We'll cover everything from pre-production planning, storyboards, and scripting, through the refinement of digital editing techniques, visual effects such as chroma keying, post-production, as well as audio and sonic components. Context is provided by regular viewings of contemporary video artworks and other audiovisual formats. Video installation is a contemporary and expanding art genre that intersects with the world of architecture, engineering, programming, new media, and performance practices. In this intermediate to advanced course, students are encouraged to expand the current themes and methods within their art or research practices by experimenting with various video installation strategies, such as video mapping to 3D objects, site-specific architectural projects, multi-channel projection environments, mixing moving image content with live performance, wearable sculptures, live feeds, physical computing, or other elements of interest.